If you've heard a lot about GLP-1s and feel confused, overwhelmed, or unsure who or what to trust, or you already know the basics and want a deeper understanding of what they actually are, this episode is for you. Today, we are talking about GLPs beyond weight loss, how they work in the body, why they affect more than appetite, when they can be supportive, and when they are not the right tool. This is a grounded, functional conversation for anyone who wants clarity over hype and thoughtful context around GLP-1s in 2026 and beyond. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jess. Welcome back to Talk Peppy to Me. I am not a doctor, and this podcast is not medical advice. I don't diagnose, prescribe, or replace your healthcare provider. In this space, we talk about health without shame, science without scare tactics, and tools without trends. Everything we talk about here is educational, informational, and meant to help you ask better questions, not make decisions in isolation. What I am is deeply experienced in this space. I work professionally in health and wellness. I partner with licensed medical providers and a telehealth company, and I'm currently completing my functional medicine health coach certification. I've also used GLP-1s medication myself and supported countless women and men navigating metabolism, hormones, inflammation, and food relationships. So today's episode is personal, but it's also grounded in science and real-world application because GLP-1s are not just weight loss drugs. And if that's the only conversation we're having, we are missing the bigger picture. So let's talk about it.
Living out loud, learning in real time, sharing the truth I needed to find. If you're ready to turn the story into something steady, let's talk peppy.
Let's slow this down and really talk about what GLP-1s actually are, because most of the internet is having a conversation without understanding the biology. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It's not a drug we invented out of thin air. It's a peptide hormone your body already produces, primarily in the gut, in response to food intake. When you eat, GLP-1 is released and it communicates with multiple systems at once. It talks to your pancreas to help regulate insulin release. It talks to your liver to reduce unnecessary glucose output. It talks to your stomach to slow gastric emptying. It talks to your brain to signal fullness and satiety. And it talks to your reward centers to reduce compulsive eating behaviors. That is why GLP-1s don't just affect appetite. They affect metabolism, behavior, and blood sugar regulation simultaneously. And that's a big deal because for decades, we treated weight and metabolic dysfunction like a character flaw, when in reality, it's a communication breakdown. One of the biggest misconceptions is that GLP-1s turn off hunger. They don't. They restore appropriate signaling. Hunger still exists. You still eat, but instead of white-knuckling cravings or thinking about food all day, the body finally gets the message that it's been nourished. This is why people often describe their experience as, my food noise got quieter, or I finally feel full, or I don't feel controlled by cravings anymore. That's not willpower. That's biology working correctly. Now let's talk about GIP, because this is where the future gets interesting. GIP stands for glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. Whew. Like GLP-1, it's an incretin hormone, meaning that it helps regulate insulin and blood sugar in response to food. But GIP does something GLP-1 doesn't do as strongly. It plays a role in fat metabolism. It influences energy storage versus energy usage, and it supports insulin signaling in muscle tissue. When GLP-1 and GIP are combined, we're no longer just talking about appetite regulation. We're talking about metabolic optimization. This is why dual agonist medications tend to show greater improvements in insulin sensitivity and a more significant reduction in inflammation. It's also why the conversation is shifting from weight loss drugs to metabolic therapies. GLPs were originally developed for type 2 diabetes, not weight loss. Weight loss was observed as a secondary effect, and now we are just scratching the surface. Current and ongoing research is exploring GLP-1 based therapies for cardiovascular disease risk reduction, for neuroinflammation, for PCOS and insulin resistance, for fatty liver disease, for Alzheimer and Parkinson's disease, for metabolic syndrome, and for longevity and health span extension. That last one, let's talk about that a second, because longevity isn't about being smaller, it's about being metabolically resilient. Stable blood sugar, low inflammation, preserved muscle mass, efficient insulin signaling. GLP-1s directly influence all of that. So why does this matter for women specifically? Women's metabolisms are uniquely sensitive to hormonal shifts and cortisol and underfueling and chronic stress, which is why so many women feel like their bodies stopped responding at some point. GLP-1s don't override hormones, they support metabolic pathways that hormones rely on. That's why GLP-1s are being explored as tools for perimenopause and menopause support, or post-diet metabolic repair, or stress-related weight resistance. Again, not magic, but potentially meaningful. This is where the conversation fits so naturally into this podcast, Talk Peppy to Me, because GLP-1s are synthetic peptides designed to mimic natural signaling molecules. They belong in the same category as growth hormone secretagogues, healing peptides, and regulatory peptides, which means they should be discussed with the same nuance of dose matters, delivery matters, context matters, and support systems matter. GLP-1s are not anti-natural. They are bioidentical in function, even if synthesized for stability and half-life. That's the difference between using peptides as tools versus trends. Now, here's where the future is going, and this is important. The future isn't higher doses or faster weight loss or more extreme outcomes. The future is personalized dosing and combination therapies, shorter term use for metabolic reset, or long-term use for cardiometabolic protection, or integration with lifestyle, peptides, and nutrition. We're moving towards precision metabolic medicine, and GLP-1s are one piece of a much larger longevity puzzle. This isn't about shrinking bodies, it's about supporting systems. GLP-1s are not too good to be true. They are tools that require education and respect, and when we talk about them responsibly, without hype or shame, we empower people to make informed decisions. Let's talk about how GLP-1s fit into a functional medicine and longevity framework, because that is where they actually shine. Okay, so when I say this is the functional take, here's what I mean. Functional medicine doesn't start with how do we suppress a symptom. It starts with why is this happening in the first place? Instead of isolating one problem like weight or appetite, functional medicine looks at how systems in the body talk to each other. And GLP-1s are a perfect example of why that matters. From a functional medicine perspective, metabolism isn't about willpower or calories, it's about communication. Your gut, brain, pancreas, hormones, and blood sugar are constantly sending messages back and forth. And when those messages are clear, your body knows when to eat, stop eating, use energy, or store energy. But when those messages are distorted because of stress, hormones, inflammation, or years of restriction, things stop working smoothly. Functional medicine doesn't blame the person, it asks what part of the conversation broke down. GLP-1s help repair that conversation. This is why GLP-1s fit into a functional approach. They don't force your body to do something unnatural. They support a signal your body already uses, fullness and blood sugar regulation. Functionally speaking, GLP-1s can help improve blood sugar stability, calm the nervous system around food, lower overall metabolic stress. That's not about shrinking the body. That's about helping systems work together again. Here's another key functional principle. Functional medicine doesn't try to control behavior. It tries to increase capacity. Capacity to eat in a balanced way, or move your body without burnout, or make decisions without food noise, or support muscle and strength. GLP-1s don't replace lifestyle habits. They can make those habits possible when the body has been stuck in survival mode. That's a very functional use of a tool. From a functional and longevity perspective, muscle matters more than weight. Muscle helps keep blood sugar stable, support hormones, and protect metabolism as we age. So a functional GLP-1 approach always includes eating enough food, prioritizing protein, and some form of strength movement. If weight loss happens but muscle is lost, functional medicine considers that a problem, not a success. So when I talk about GLP-1s from a functional lens, this is what I mean. They are support tools, not fixes. They help systems communicate better. They reduce stress on the body. They work alongside nourishment, movement, and recovery. That's very different from using them as a crash diet solution. Okay, this is my learning out loud moment, because one of the most important things I think we can do in health conversations is be honest about what we learned along the way, not just what we know now. When I first started exploring GLP-1s, I came in educated. I understood the science, I understood the mechanism, but even with all that, I still had assumptions. I thought hunger would disappear completely. I thought discipline would become effortless. I thought the mental side of food would just shut off. What actually happened was much more nuanced. The biggest surprise wasn't the physical changes. It was how loud food noise had been before and how quiet it became. I didn't realize how much mental energy I was spending thinking about food and planning food and resisting food or feeling guilty about food. When that noise softened, I didn't feel controlled. I felt free. Not detached from my body, more connected to it. For the first time in a long time, maybe ever, I could ask myself, am I hungry? Am I satisfied? Do I want more, or am I done? And actually hear the answer. But here's the part I had to learn in real time. GLP-1s didn't give me permission to ignore my body. They actually demanded that I pay more attention to it. I learned myself in and out when I started this medication. I learned very quickly that undereating made me feel worse, not better, that protein wasn't optional, that strength training mattered now more than ever, and that hydration and electrolytes were a non-negotiable. GLP-1s didn't lower the bar, they actually raised it, and that surprised me. Looking back, I can see how easy it would be to chase faster weight loss, to eat too little, or to skip strength training, or to treat the medication like the solution. And I see people doing that now, not because they're careless, but because nobody taught them differently. That's why I am so intentional about how I talk about this. GLP-1s don't replace self-care. They make self-care more effective, but only if you respect the tool. Using a GLP-1 changed how I think about health, not because it fixed everything, because it didn't, but because it showed me what was possible when my body wasn't fighting me. It reinforced something I already believed, but I hadn't fully felt yet. Health is not about punishment, it's about support. When the body feels supported, it cooperates. I'm not sharing this because I think everyone should be on a GLP-1. I am sharing this because shame thrives in silence and nuance gets lost online, and people deserve honesty, not hype. If you're listening to this and thinking, that sounds like me, I want you to know that you're not alone. And if you're listening to this and thinking, well, that's not for me, that's okay too. Learning out loud means giving ourselves permission to evolve without needing certainty or perfection. So now that you've heard what GLPs are, how they work functionally, and how they felt in a real body, let's do the reality check, because even good tools can cause problems when they're misunderstood. GLP-1s don't fix your life. They don't heal trauma. They don't replace nourishment, movement, sleep, or stress management. If someone is using a GLP-1 hoping it will silence emotional eating without addressing the emotions, or compensate for underfueling, or replace strength training, that's when problems show up. GLPs support biology. They don't override reality. Let's talk about side effects, honestly. Nausea, GI discomfort, fatigue, appetite suppression. These aren't signs you're weak or doing it wrong. They are signals. Sometimes they mean the dose is too high, or the titration was too fast, or you're not eating enough, or you're underhydrated, or your gut needs support. Pushing through side effects without adjusting is not discipline, it's ignoring data. A functional approach listens first. Undereating is the biggest risk that I see, and this is the one I care about most, because GLP-1s make it easier to eat less, but eating too little is not healing. Undereating can lead to muscle loss, hormonal disruption, hair shedding, fatigue, plateaus, and rebound weight gain. Weight loss at the expense of muscle and metabolism is not a win, it's a setup for failure. And if someone isn't talking to you about protein, nourishment, and strength, that's a problem. Also, not everyone should start with a GLP-1. Ooh, this is important. Some people need gut healing first, or blood sugar stabilization, or nervous system support. Jumping into appetite suppression when the body is already stressed can backfire. And functional medicine asks, is this the right tool right now? Not just, can this work? This isn't a lifetime sentence or a quick fix. Another big misconception. You're either on this forever or you're using it wrong. Reality is more nuanced. Some people use GLP-1s short term to reset metabolic signals. Some use them longer for cardiometabolic protection. Some try them and decide it's not the right fit. All of those outcomes are valid. There is no moral scorecard. But GLP-1s do require responsibility, and this part matters. GLP-1s require education, monitoring, respect for your body, and a willingness to adjust. When people treat them casually, problems will follow. When people treat them intentionally, outcomes should improve. The tool isn't dangerous. Misuse is. And here's the truth that I want you to walk away with. GLP-1s won't save you, but they can support you. They won't do the work for you, but they can make the work possible. They won't make you worthy. You already are. And with all of that said, let's bring this home with a pep talk, because if this episode stirred anything up for you, you deserve encouragement, not judgment. Okay, take a deep breath with me for a second. If this episode brought up a lot, curiosity, relief, confusion, resistance, maybe even emotion, that makes sense, because conversations about bodies, weight, health, and help are rarely neutral. They're layered with years of pressure, expectations, and stories we didn't choose. So here's what I want you to hear clearly and gently. You are not broken. Your body is not failing you. And needing support does not mean you did something wrong. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that doing it the right way meant doing it alone. That if you just tried harder or restricted more or pushed through longer, your body would eventually cooperate. But bodies aren't machines. They're adaptive, protective, and deeply influenced by stress, hormones, and history. Choosing support, whether that's a GLP-1, therapy, coaching, nutrition, or rest, is not weakness, it's self-respect. Using a GLP-1 is not a character statement. It doesn't make you disciplined or undisciplined. It doesn't make you lazy or driven. It doesn't say anything about your worth. It's a health decision, and health decisions don't need public approval. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you take care of your body. Another thing I want to release you from is urgency. You don't have to start anything immediately or commit forever or have total certainty. Learning is allowed to come before action. You are allowed to gather information, sit with it, talk it through, and decide in your own time. That's a grounded approach. It's not indecision. Whether you use a GLP-1, tried one and stopped, you're considering it, or no, it's not for you, your body still deserves nourishment, strength, rest, and compassion. Health is not something you earn by shrinking yourself. It's something you build by supporting yourself. You are not doing this alone. If there is one thing I want you to take from this podcast, it's this. You don't have to navigate health in isolation. There are providers who care, there are frameworks that respect your body, and there are conversations like this one that exist to replace shame with understanding. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to change your mind, and you're allowed to choose tools that support your future. If this episode helped you see GLPs in a new light beyond just weight loss, then share it with someone who's been tangled up in the noise. These are conversations worth having, especially when they're grounded in respect and real understanding. If you're curious about GLPs as a tool in your health strategy, I always encourage you to work with licensed providers who educate, monitor, and support, not just prescribe. You'll find my trusted resources and links in the show's notes. To keep exploring peptides, functional medicine, and grounded biohacking with me, make sure you're subscribed to Talk Peppy to me wherever you listen to podcasts, and don't forget to turn on new episode notifications. You don't want to miss what's coming, because next week we're doing a red flag or green light deep dive on the 2026 wellness trends, what's actually worth your time and energy, and what's hype disguised as health. We'll decode the big buzzy topics so you can make confident choices without falling for marketing noise. Thank you for showing up for your body, your health, and your future in such a thoughtful way. I am so glad you're here. And remember, it always helps to talk peppy.
We're hearing out loud.